So, hello everyone. Today I work in one of Australia's largest employers where I get to lead and inspire the work that they do to create access and inclusion for people with disability, and that organisation is the Commonwealth Bank. I'm also very excited to have recently been selected to take up a secondment supported by Commonwealth Bank to work at the Australian Human Rights Commission. I'm working on the National Inquiry against Employment Discrimination against older Australians and people with a disability. So a really great project that is absolutely necessary to create greater opportunities for employment for all of you sort of as you move on beyond school. Before Commonwealth Bank, I worked in the Human Resources team at Cancer Council New South Wales, where I led a team of around 7 employees, and we supported a workforce of over 3,000 volunteers across New South Wales. And prior to that, I had a series of roles in marketing, public relations, and often Graham talks about one of his stories that he sometimes shares is around sort of his first job where being a lawyer, it was sort of really difficult to get a job as a lawyer, but his first job was in an administration role on the telephone. And I'm sad to say that one of my first jobs was also very similar. It was something that as a blind person, you were encouraged to be a switchboard operator. So that was my first job, one of my first jobs, a switchboard operator, because supposedly that's what blind people were good at doing. So that was what I did. Or so I was told anyway. On a personal level, I've jumped out of aeroplanes. I've flown flying go-karts. I've been a charity quest entrant and a model. I've trained in speech and drama, and I've been part of several amateur theatre productions. And for the past 2 years, I've been an ambassador for the New South Wales Don't Diss My Ability campaign. You could say that I've achieved a lot, but it hasn't come easy. And some of my success has been luck, some because of the support of other people, but mostly it's been due to some planning, having resilience, determination, and mostly believing in myself. So today I'm going to talk to you about some of the importance of believing in yourself and how you can get through some of the challenges in life. And they will be there, but as Graham was saying, having a vision impairment or being blind, it's not a reason not to do things and embrace life and get as much as you want out of it. And I know a little bit about, I guess, the barriers or the tough parts of life, and that is what helps build the lessons or give you the lessons to help you achieve and to get where you want to go. You see, I was born in what some people might refer to as poverty. I come from Broken Hill and lived in a little 2-bedroom house on the outskirts of town near a quarry. There were 5 kids and my mum didn't work, so money was always tight and luxuries few. When I was a toddler, my parents realised that I couldn't see properly. I went to many doctors, but none of them could tell my parents what the problem was. And eventually they thought I had an eye condition called Stargardt's. From the age of 5, each year I was sent across to Sydney to stay at the Royal Far West home at Sydney. And that's at Manly, for anyone who doesn't know where that is. And it was amazing. Manly from Broken Hill. Huge contrast. And that was to have check-ins with ophthalmologists at the Children's Hospital. And while it was hard to diagnose my eye condition, my parents were told that by the time I started high school, that I would have lost my sight. The trips to Sydney were fun though, and I soon started to think that when I wanted to grow up, I wanted to live in Sydney. And that was the beginning of my first big dream. I probably didn't realise it then, but it was a dream that I held for most of my life. It wasn't until I was in my 20s that a brilliant eye doctor in Adelaide correctly diagnosed my eye condition. It was a genetic condition that there's no treatment, but, you know, it's been a journey, and at least I knew what the diagnosis finally was. And by the way, I didn't lose my sight until I was much later, until I was actually in my late 20s. So I had sort of some vision that helped me, sort of get by until I was in my late 20s, sort of until I lost most of my vision. School was pretty tough, not because of the study. I know you're disappointed to hear that, aren't you? But it was really because there was no support for children with a vision impairment, especially in a remote regional town. A funny thing that did happen, and I'm glad to say it's so different now, and for those teachers in the room, you might get a giggle at this story. The education department, and I went to school a long time ago, but the education department in Sydney at the time thought, or they'd heard about this little girl in Broken Hill who had a vision impairment, so we should help her. And they sent a magnifier in the mail. And that was going to help everything. Sadly, it didn't, but at least the thought was there. But as I said, I'm glad things are very different today. The teachers at the time didn't understand what I needed or what they could do to help, and a lot of the kids were cruel and teased me because I was different. Even my guide dog cries at that. Well, the people at school weren't very nice. I did used to like studying, and I used to stay up quite late at night trying to catch up on my study and getting all my homework done. We didn't have social media in those days either. My mother used to hassle me and say that I was wasting my time because I wouldn't be able to do anything much because I was going to be blind. So I didn't have a very supportive mum. Unlike Graham, I didn't have other blind people to inspire me, and I was ashamed of my vision impairment and embarrassed to ask for help. Not anymore. It is so refreshing to be at an event like this where so many parents with a genuine need to find out, how you can support your son or daughter, is important to you. And my life would have been so different if I'd had the same. And I guess for you, like the teenagers here today, one of my tips is to certainly don't be afraid to ask for help. Okay. It was around this time that I realised I wanted to study, I wanted a job, and I didn't want my eye condition to stop me from having any of those things. I wanted a normal life and a normal future. So as I talk, I'm going to share some of my experiences, tips and strategies that helped me get from that little girl in Broken Hill to where I am today. So my first tip is to know that one of the most important things you can do is to believe in yourself and use your initiative. And by saying use your initiative, I mean to just be aware of your own choices and to, to know what you want. And you can make those decisions or choices on your own, but I also encourage you to talk to others and learn from others. Again, as Graham already sort of mentioned, there's a lot of inspiring people out there who have had some great experiences and who you can who are happy to share with you and whom you can learn from. I realised that Broken Hill and the difficulty that I was having there wasn't going to help me to get that job that I wanted and to have my dream. So, to fast track from there, with the support of my dad, I managed to get into a vocational course in Adelaide, and this meant I left school and set off on the adventure of my life. I was 15 years old. It was lonely sometimes, but I'd learnt to be independent and away from home from the many visits that I'd had to the far west home as a child. I stayed in Adelaide for a year and I trained to type, operate and to do clerical duties to get that all-important switchboard job that blind people are supposed to be good at. After a year, I did return home and started to look for work in Broken Hill, but it became pretty obvious that it wasn't going to be easy. It was also hard living back at home with my mum, who wasn't very supportive. So my second tip for today is to know your strengths and to use them. At 16, I didn't have much experience, but the experience I did have was my confidence, and I felt quite independent, and I was able to travel to new areas by myself. So I knew I could make a go of whatever I decided to do. Okay. So I started making inquiries. I found out that I could get a disability support pension and that I could get some subsidised accommodation. So I got my pension, I bought a suitcase, packed my few clothes, and with Dad's blessing, bought a one-way bus ticket to Adelaide. So I went back there. I did confront lots of difficulties, but I didn't give up, and there were lots of solutions there just waiting for me. My next tip is be prepared, and be prepared to learn to accept setbacks. When I moved to Adelaide, I did enrol in some more courses. I completed my schooling. I went back and did my HSC through TAFE. I got my first job and I moved into a share house with friends. And all was going really well. But then the first setback. I lost my job and I wasn't really prepared for that. But in life, situations will change suddenly and when you least expect it. So sometimes you can prepare and sometimes you can't. Eventually I got another job and life got back to normal. Then the next major setback, I got a detached retina. So the vision I had, I suddenly lost. I had a series of operations and we managed to sort of patch it up for a while, but eventually I ended up losing my eye and I now have a prosthetic eye. I was devastated and depressed and I thought I was going to look like a monster and wear ugly dark glasses to cover up my face. I was diagnosed at the time with depression and I did need some medication and counselling to get beyond that. But at that low point, I started to look for a positive approach, a more positive approach to get back onto my journey again. So I believed one of the solutions was to ask for support and accept support from other people. Sounds crazy, but this was the turning point in my life. I needed to feel good, so I enrolled in a modelling course and a self-development course. I had a job working for Royal Society for the Blind in Adelaide at the time, and with the new hairstyle and makeup, they started using me as a model on their ads and direct marketing material. I became a public relations specialist, and I decided to enter some fundraising competitions and won. I became a charity queen twice, and I got to go on television. I did interviews and to do public speaking, and I wasn't a monster. I loved it and got some private speaking competitions, and ended up winning a speech and drama diploma. And then a setback happened. I might skip that. Okay, thank you. So here I was. Sorry, I just lost my place, Graham. Okay. So around this time, I'd also decided to apply for a guide dog. And this gave me newfound independence. Remember my dream to move to Sydney, and this guide dog gave me the independence to do that. This was my chance to make that move to Sydney. I had an offer of a 3-month job at Sydney. I accepted, and I moved to Sydney to take up that role. And I've already shared my journey of my role since then. So I'll just get to my... So my 2 tips, just to finalise: dream about what you want to do. Keep dreaming and see what's in the dreams that you want to do, and to see those dreams come true. Secondly, dare yourself to where you've never gone before, but plan to have setbacks. Don't focus on your vision impairment, and don't let it rule your life. You might need to make some adjustments and ask for some support because of it, but don't let it determine who you are. And lastly, believe in yourself. Thank you very much, and I look forward to speaking to many of you throughout the day.